Joe Biden wants to re-strip due process from college males when it comes to sexual assault on campus. Ironically, if the same standard was applied to culture in general, then Biden's accuser, Tara Reade, would be a very rich woman, and Biden would be in prison right now. I'm Dr. Duke. He's Dave Fiorazzo, and this is The Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Katie is off, so our good friend Dave Fiorazzo will be joining us all week, and I just got to say, with Katie stepping aside, I thought for once I was going to be the best-looking thing on this show. All right, before we start, I want to take a moment to encourage everyone to download our brand new Freedom Project Media app. You get access to hundreds of hours of content and 17 new shows a week, and 18th is on the way. Plus, I'm working on a new 4-part lecture series set to be released in coming weeks, so keep your eye out for that. Simply search Freedom Project Media on your smart device, and please make sure you allow notifications so that we can notify you when new content comes. Okay, our first story today takes us to the college campus where the Biden administration seeks to strip legal protections from students accused of sexual assault on college campuses. Hashtag Believe All Women doesn't apply if you're Creepy Joe, Gropem Joe Biden. So yeah, Betsy DeVos, the last Department of Education secretary under Donald Trump, she went to a lot of trouble and a lot of legal steps she took to put due process back. You may remember under the Obama administration, the infamous Dear Colleague letter, in which Barack Obama basically just wink, didn't actually formally change the law, didn't go back to Congress to change the law, just kind of winked. If you want to take away the due process rights of boys on college campuses, you want to deny them equal representation, you want to deny them due process, you go ahead and do that. We at the feds will allow it. Took 4 years for Betsy DeVos to change that by taking all the correct steps. Biden, of course, with the wave of his geriatric pen, wants to erase that and make men second-class citizens again when it comes to sexual assault on college campuses.
Well, Duke, one thing, I'm glad you got to Tara Reade and when Biden was accused last year, because I wanted to make sure we got in my exposed DDS, Democrat double standards. This is amazing. I know it mentions Cuomo at the end of the article too. I think now 7, 8, are we into the double figures now of women coming forward that accuse Cuomo? Something may actually happen to him.
With Cuomo, it's not double figures, it's double D figures.
Double D figures.
That's the Cuomo way. It's how they do it in New York.
But what happened with Tara Reade, she wasn't even given a voice in the media. So they don't believe all women. They only believe liberal Democrat women. And that is the tragedy of this. That is the horrific double standard and the hypocrisy of the Me Too movement and believe all women.
It really is. And you remember how fast we knew the name of Christine Blasey Ford? I don't know the name. We really don't. You have to look in the media to find out what the name of Cuomo's accusers are, right? They're not getting any press. They're not getting any publicity. Worse still, Joe Biden actually came out yesterday for the first time and commented on the situation in which, when he was asked, should Cuomo resign? Everybody in New York is saying yes. All of his former allies are saying yes. Biden said, let the investigation play out. The longer this goes, the more likely Cuomo gets to say, well, what would you, if you're Gropey Joe, what else can you do? I mean, like you said, the double standard is so obvious. So he's going to stand by his man. And this thing on college campuses, so legislation for me, not for thee. Standards for me, not for thee. On a college campus now, when a young boy is accused of sexual assault, he may be denied his right to access to the accuser's statement. He might not be able to be allowed to confront his accuser. His lawyer may be withheld from getting certain information about the case. This is how you're allowed to discriminate on college campuses. And it's going to be Joe Biden, the irony. Joe Biden, the one thing he should do is rename this the Andrew Cuomo boys won't get away from it law. That's the only other hypocrisy he's left to do.
What's so sad is the actual women who have gone through this in the past in their lives, they're looking at this and going, I mean, it's disappointing that they see the hypocrisy, but when they say anything about it, they're not given a platform because the media will cover for any liberal Democrat because they're above the law, it seems. It's really upsetting to me. And especially some of these women's movements that are supposed to be for feminism or women's rights or to protect all women. And yet they're certainly not coming forward here when it comes to Biden, Cuomo, and anybody else that's been accused on the left.
Well, we got to look at this. When it comes to left-wing men, you got to give it to the liberals. They're equal equality horrible on the record, right? So on the one hand, if you're a woman who accuses a powerful Democrat man, you will be smeared, you will be lied about, you will be ignored, you will have no hash. It's like the soup Nazi, right? No hashtag for you. No hashtag me for you. Now, by the same token, if you're a boy on a college campus accused by a woman, anything that's, and again, if a woman makes up anything, there are no consequences for her. Absolutely no consequences. Yet the boy will have to go through all the legalities on his own. With the university side, the assumption at the university will be that the male is guilty until proven innocent. And if you look at the article we're dealing with now, there's an interesting point here that more and more often now, when these things go into court, overwhelmingly the falsely accused boys win. And so the universities know this. The Biden administration knows this. They know that this disproportionate application of the law, the refusal to treat men and women equally under law on college campuses, they know that when this eventually spills out into the courts, 99% of the time the boys win. And that's what's so cynical about this. They know it. They know that it's unconstitutional. They have no right to do it, but they do it anyway. Because for 6 months, 8 months, a year, 2, 3 years, they can punish that kid.
Exactly.
They can suspend him. They can throw him off class. They can make him rack up thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars in legal baggage. And when it's all said and done, and 3 years down the road, the university loses, the dishonest girl loses, guess what? They don't have to pay any reparations whatsoever.
And their reputations were trashed. Their lives are ruined oftentimes by the time the truth comes out in the courts. And so it's really an injustice to those who are accused.
Yeah, the article says numerous courts have already upheld the idea that students deserve due process rights, even on college campuses where they face expulsion and not jail. Hundreds of accused students have sued their colleges and universities, and that's just the number that we can afford to count, who can afford an attorney after being punished. These things are all over the place. You know, it seems to me, too, that with regards to these false, bogus claims, one of the things that we might want to stop to consider is, why do we allow universities, and universities only, to investigate potential rape and assault cases? It seems to me you would be much better off taking it out of the hands of biased universities. That would be like banks, right? Banks saying, okay, we've got a bank employee who we think might be skimming money off the tap. So what we're going to do is, we're not going to call the cops for grand theft or for embezzlement. What we're going to do is put the bank CEO in charge of determining whether or not this guy's guilty. Why do we allow universities who are so partisan on behalf of any accuser at the expense of the accused? Why do we allow them and not police officers or local courts deal with this? All right, our second story takes us to New York. We have spent basically 2 years all over the education chancellor of New York City, a fellow by the name of Carranza. He finally resigned. He was a disaster. He was an ideologue. He was a socialist. He was a left-wing culture warrior playing at education reform. And I suppose our 1 week enjoyment of the fact that Carranza stepped down was undercut when we found out who his replacement is. The new incoming chancellor, Misha Ross Porter, has the same background, and her point is basically that America is an illegitimate country, and that the entire school system, the entire country, was based on racism. So once again, we've got a Secretary of Education, a Chancellor of Education in New York, who is not interested terribly in education. She is in another critical race theory warrior.
Can I just quote something that she retweeted?
Absolutely.
David Kirkland, she retweeted this and said, "Speak the truth, brother." And he said, "Critical race theory is the audacity to tell the truth in places built on lies. This truth will make us free, though there are some who don't want us free and are willing to sever a nation to ensure that we stay chained." I thought the Bible says you will know the truth and the truth will set you free. This is saying something different.
Well, the man you mentioned, David Kirkland, believe it or not, is a New York University Dean of Equity. And what he's basically saying is that critical race theory is the new Bible, Dave. What he's saying is that forget what you know, forget the founding fathers, forget the origins of this country, forget the fact that America is the only country to ever fought a war to end slavery, forget the fact that Western culture alone created human rights, civil rights, women's rights, gay rights. Those only are issues that were created in the Western culture. Forget all that. The new Bible of Western culture is critical race theory.
Okay.
Everything's racist all the time. And the only thing that's going to take away our chains is critical race theory. This reminds me of Joe Biden, right? Remember back when he was running as vice president for Barack Obama, and he said, the Republicans want to put you people in chains.
Put you back in chains.
Yeah, he went full Al Sharpton with the dialect, right? Want you in chains. So now you know what New York City is going to get. More of the same. What they're going to get is failed kids, kids that can't read, kids that can't write, kids that aren't ready for college, kids in the 80th, 88th percentile who are not able to do reading, writing, and math at the grade level they should, but they'll be super, super woke.
You had me at Dean of Equity. Is there these positions now in universities? I just want to say one thing about this Bronx school district official, Rafaela Espinal, accused Porter of firing her for not participating in the Wakanda Forever salute. I didn't know what the heck that is, so I'm glad it went on. A gesture from the movie Black Panther that Porter frequently used to end meetings, and this woman said Porter disciplined her for not being black enough.
And she's Spanish. She's not black enough because she wouldn't engage in this. I have not seen that movie either, but there's apparently a particular symbol that I don't know. And so she also has a number of other cases like this, just like Carranza did. The outgoing superintendent had 6 or 7 at least legal filings against him, people who said that he was targeting me because I was white. What Carranza basically said when he was the superintendent, this is we need to do everything we can to make this a minority school district, a program for minority people, and our new Miss Porter seems to have exactly the same kind of tenure. Porter's time as superintendent, where she was marked by conflict and controversy. Two separate lawsuits accuse her of discriminating against Jewish and white teachers. And you mentioned already the Bronx teacher who was black, but apparently not black enough. And isn't it amazing that when we're talking about Barack Obama, his biraciality is not an issue. He's black. We talk about that half-wit lunatic, spoiled child Meghan Markle. Her biracialism is not a problem. She's fully black. When it comes to employees of black despots like this, they get to decide whether you're black enough. Suddenly, that's a big issue.
Here, one more thing at the end, going back to Carranza. He was friendly to critical race theory back in 2019, and apparently he hosted a white supremacy culture training session for his school administrators. This has been going on for years, apparently.
Years and years. And unfortunately, like you said, the ethos of the modern university and the modern high school and the modern public school system is that education, serious education, is racist. Because it has winners and losers, A students and B students. It requires kids who don't do their homework, don't come to class, actually have to pay a price for that. And given that so many of those kids in the inner city are minority kids, we've gotten rid of, it's done now. We've gotten rid of education. We've replaced it with all this grievance. So if you're a white kid in one of these schools, just like Mrs. Porter treats her own white employees, you're guilty. And if you're a minority, we're going to excuse you from the burden to having to learn anything because, that's just white supremacy too. In a story bound to freak you out, the LA school districts, Los Angeles County, one of the worst educational districts in the country. And if you look at something like 80% of African-American males that go through the LA schools are functionally illiterate as adults. That's how poorly they do their job. Now they're partnering with Microsoft, and that means Bill, I never saw somebody I didn't want to spy on Gates. And the implication now is we're going to have programs. We're going to use Microsoft to track schools in the name of COVID. We've got a video here that is staggeringly bad. Let me show the video, and when we come out, we'll turn it over to Dave.
Mom, I'm scared about going back to school. I don't want to get sick, and I don't want to get you and Dad sick.
Our scientists tell us there are 3 things we must do to stay safe. Wear masks, make sure we social distance, and wash our hands. And now, your school, with the help of Microsoft Corporation, has created another. Introducing Daily Pass, your exclusive ticket for safely going back to school. Each week, you can schedule your free on-campus COVID test. The results are displayed in your Daily Pass. And if you choose to take your test off campus, you can post the results in your Daily Pass. And the moment vaccinations are available, you'll simply be able to schedule yours through your Daily Pass. But the real magic is your daily health check. Just answer a few simple health questions every day, and like magic, your entrance ticket appears.
So, how did it go?
Dad, I have to admit, I was scared at first, but then I felt so safe. It was so good to be back. Thanks for keeping me safe. I love you so much.
Love that last image. Dad's keeping her safe with no seatbelts on and no masks. But what were your thoughts on the story, Dave?
Where's the Kleenex? It's so good to be back at school. Oh, there's so many red flags about this one. Of course, Bill Gates, red flag number one. But they plan to reopen, the schools. When they do, first of all, Duke, also they said scientists. Apparently, the schools and the government and the left only trust certain scientists. They don't trust the science. It's certain scientists. But anyway,
before you move on, that's a very salient point. In the opening of the video, the announcer they must have resurrected the voice of Mr. Rogers to do this. Nevertheless, it says that scientists tell us that there are 3 things we have to do: social distance, wash your hands, and wear masks. Microsoft has added a 4th. See how tricky that is? There's absolutely nothing scientific about what Microsoft is doing.
Nope.
Microsoft isn't scientists. Bill Gates, God help him, he's not a scientist, and he's surely not an educational reformer. Common Core, anybody? The single biggest disaster of the last 40 years, he propagated in American schools. But notice the clearly clever alliance. Scientists say this, and now's another thing. They don't mention science, but they imply it is scientifically based. It isn't. It's a way to surveil your kids. This is spying on your kids. This is creating a day-to-day way to monitor what's going on with your kid's body. We told you 10 years ago with Common Core that the day was quickly coming when you would see these kinds of interventions in the classroom, all of this biometric stuff. COVID was the perfect opportunity. And isn't it interesting that a vulture, a culture vulture like Bill Gates, and I call it, he hovers over the carcass of hurricanes, hovers over the carcass of overpopulation with his abortion policies. He's a ghoul and a vulture hovering over these kids now. One more way to make sure we track them from cradle to grave.
So you're saying you don't trust the science?
I don't. Well, yeah, that's it, right. Bill Gates must be being a second-rate computer maker. Oh, did I say it? Yeah, I said it. I got to go Apple, which has got its own problems. But being a second-rate computer creator, what does that qualify him to do any of this stuff? It's like Bill Nye the Science Guy, right? They almost look alike, him and Bill Gates. Of course, Bill Nye doesn't have a single science degree. Neither does Bill Gates.
They know all about viruses.
Well, there
Microsoft.
You go.
No, seriously. Science doesn't say anything. Scientists do.
I like what you said. They know all about viruses. Maybe they'll come up a patch. They'll create a patch for COVID. How about that? Everybody stick a little Microsoft patch on your chest and it'll be all fixed.
Well, aren't parents a little concerned about this story where you've got data being gathered through this app, reported to health authorities, Stanford University, UCLA, the Johns Hopkins University, Anthem Blue Cross, HealthNet, and Cedars-Sinai, to provide insights and strategies to implement in safe school environments, school officials said. The barcode
is creepy. You wonder if they're going to have it Auschwitz-like tattooed on the inside forearm of everybody. Or like dogs, implant a chip under the skin behind the neck, right? So they could always find you. This is really Orwellian when you stop and think about it. And here's my big warning. Don't you think for 1 second when COVID's over, this is going to end that program. Tell me they won't start doing it for what caloric intake. Obesity is the new COVID, right? This week on Instant Classic, I've decided to make this Socialism Sucks Week. So what we've done is we've taken some very important quotes from thinkers and artists and writers, and we're going to apply it to socialism. Since the American federal government has decided to go full socialism with all of what they're up to, all of the ways that they're not telling us, they refuse to give us all the numbers on the borders. Seems to be one of the very few things that you do have. The federal government is required to do vis-a-vis the Constitution is actually protect the borders. And they're not doing that. They're doubling down on cheat by mail with their new proposed voting legislation. They're also coming at you with the Equality Act, which if it passes will undermine the First Amendment religious protections for Americans. So they're going full socialist. So I thought we would take a moment today and use this entire week, all 5 days of this week. We're going to call it Socialist Sucks Days, and here's our first set of quotes. This is from the Russian 19th century figure who's talking about socialism. He said, quote, Michael Bakunin, he said, if you took the most ardent revolutionary and vested him in absolute power, within a year, he would be worse than the Tsar himself. He would be worse than the Tsar himself. That's right on. That you give these progressive theocrats, idiocrats, educrats, you give them a little bit of power, and all their social bona fides, all their concern for the people turns them into the worst killers. Think about what happened in the French Revolution, right? Within a few years after getting rid of the king, the left-wing Jacobins were beheading more soldiers in France, more citizens in France than the king ever did. That always happens, and our second quote of the day comes from the great Ludwig von Mises, the great conservative economic theorist. He's speaking of Marxists. He says, quote, the Marxians love democratic institutions. It was a strategy. When they said they did, it was a strategy only. A pious fraud for the deception of the masses. Within a socialist community, there is no room left for freedom. That's exactly right, von Mises says. According to Marx himself, democracy is the necessary first step towards socialism. So when all those progressives pretend that they care about our democracy, as you can see in the news today, I'm thinking about you, Nancy Pelosi. It's not about protecting our democracy. It's about moving that democracy predictably down the left-wing socialist line. All right, just a quick reminder to please download our brand new Freedom Project Media app. Simply search Freedom Project in your app store and make sure you allow us to notify you. And if you're a fan of the show, please consider a one-time tax-deductible donation to support our Patriot Club, and we will send you our signature tumbler. And doesn't Dave look great over there with in front of that tumbler? It's like a Wonder Bra or hair plugs. I mean, once you wave that in front of you, you just become buffer, don't you? It's pretty amazing. Before we go, we want to take a moment to show some love to our Patriot members. We'd like to give a shout out from Tanya from Franklin, Virginia. And boy, given the way the Virginia's made a serious left turn, Tanya, thank you so much for supporting us. And that's the show for today. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. He's Dave. And until next time, stay educated, my friends.